There are certain kinds of movies and television shows that just aren't my thing. I can tell you that I think they suck, but I can't tell you that they do suck because my dislike for them is personal and subjective. Then there are some kinds of movies and shows that I think can be measured against the pros and cons of their own standards and can be found to be lacking on more objective grounds. With regard to a movie like No Country for Old Men, one general rule about me covers basically the entire course of my complaints. I have zero tolerance for obscurantism, not just in films, but in any form of art or literature you can name. Bullshit, bullshit, bullshit. All of it. Throw it away. It's worthless. And what I've noticed about some of the comments and responses to reviews such as this one in 2001: A Space Odyssey is that most audiences utterly confuse obscurantism with subtlety. And that is the reason that I have decided to do this epilogue. For a good example of subtlety in a film, I repeat about The Sixth Sense. In that movie, Shyamalan used the color red hinting in the background of various scenes to signify important aspects of the film. But a much better example of subtlety done well comes from just about every single facet of the movie Pulp Fiction. To give one example, it is said in one of the conversations between Mia and Vincent that the only thing Tony Rocky Horror touched of hers was her hand when he shook it. Through the rest of the film, Vincent struggles with his desire to be seduced by Mia, but at the end of the story, all he touches is her hand when he shakes it. These two examples work well because the subtlety in the film is working in concert with the story. It is not, for example, the color of red just dumped arbitrarily in the scene, connecting to nothing but whatever you imagine for yourself. Subtlety in a film, I can accept. Obscurantism? No. Did I just bang on my desk, really? Obscurantism is not subtle. It's not presenting an idea that engages your consciousness and subconsciousness of a film. It is a deliberate attempt to hide the facts or meanings of your work. The practice of preventing the facts or the full details of the matter from becoming known. Not only can anyone do this with just about any art form you can name, but you don't even need to know the full details of the meaning yourself. It requires no talent to place something on a screen and raise questions about it, because placing it on the screen with no answers automatically raises questions whether or not there are any answers to be had. That's not because the writer is talented. It's just because the writer knows you will have this reaction whether he writes anything or not. Or she, I apologize for that. Now, before I go any further, I want to quickly make time for one sincere apology. Coen brothers, I'm sorry about all the fuck yous in my review. You're the Coen brothers. You made Fargo, you made The Big Lebowski, you made True Grit, and you're the best. In truth, this was not entirely the Coen brothers' fault. No Country for Old Men the movie was based on the novel written by Cormac McCarthy. Now, I'm not a literary critic, and there is no reason for me to bring this up except to talk about one aspect of the movie, so I'm just going to say this as quickly as I can. For the most part, Cormac McCarthy is just a shitty writer who doesn't know how to write, so he typically writes in a genre that tries to fool you into thinking that he can. That genre is known as modernism, which almost exclusively deals with randomness and a departure from any real truth, meaning, or structure. Basically, this shit writes itself. A girl walks into a graveyard and stares at a grave when a dark figure walks towards her. The girl's eyes tell the whole story as they react in fear, and the next day she has lunch at a diner. Government sucks. There, I just wrote the most brilliant modernist novel ever created. Cormac McCarthy has written in other genres, but it's this particular one that demonstrates his limitations as a writer. Those who can't write shit like this. Cormac McCarthy wrote No Country for Old Men in the hopes that people would be so befuddled by its obscurant plot and lack of structure that they would just assume it was brilliant. The Coen brothers are therefore partially responsible for this fuck of a film because, to be perfectly honest, I think they fell for this and thought that there was some brilliant story to make a movie out of here. No Country for Old Men the movie is almost a page-for-page dictation of the novel, And as they didn't write the novel, I don't think that they can be held responsible for the movie being as bad as it was, at least not entirely. What I do hold them responsible for is the fact that No Country for Old Men, the novel, actually had characters in it. They weren't great characters, but they were characters nonetheless. There was actually dialogue in the book. It wasn't great dialogue, but it was dialogue nonetheless. We got at least a basic sense of who these people all were and what their goals in life were. So what I hold the Coen brothers accountable for is the fact that they said, hey, let's take a novel that was already about nothing and strip it down even more. The Coen brothers' strategy in this film was to replace characters and story with subliminal obscurantism going on in the background. And for that, I say fuck them. If you are making a movie that consists of nothing but personless people, either sitting on ass or wandering around aimlessly, I'm not gonna sit here and go, oh gee, I wonder if there was any correlation between the way Anton looked at a blank screen and the way Tommy Lee Jones looked at a blank screen. No, bullshit. Write something. Write something or stop wasting my time. And if you think that that statement is unfair, then I refer you to my movie, Purple Monkey Dishwasher. Every fan of No Country for Old Men should be a fan of my movie as well. You want minimalism? I gave you minimalism. I don't even have movement in my film. You want symbolism? I gave you symbolism. Notice how the guy isn't wearing shoes? Yeah, it's a commentary on how the poor are being treated in our day and age, why not? Oh look, he's got a book. Gee, I wonder what the book is. What do you think the book is? He's wearing modern clothes while sitting in an old-fashioned chair. I wonder what that means. The answer to all of these questions is who gives a shit? Because whatever the symbolism is, whether there is any meaning or not, the only thing I've succeeded in doing is making you watch a guy sit in a chair for 2 hours. Now, I don't know, but I am going to assume that those who tried to watch my movie didn't get through the full 2 hours. Would it really be fair of me to condemn you for not doing so just because you weren't interpreting the meanings behind the chair, the book, and the man? If you didn't make it through the full 2 hours, it's not because you wanted an action movie, it's not because you don't appreciate subtlety, it's not because you just don't get it. It's because you probably have better things to do with your 2 hours than sit there and watch nothing. Now, I know that watching a dude sitting in a chair and watching No Country for Old Men are not the same thing. What I'm talking about is the principle behind both films. I believe that my review demonstrates that the film has no characters and no story, but those 2 points are at least arguable, and many people have argued that the film does in fact have those things. I think a better case can be made for the fact that the film doesn't have those things by, well, quite frankly, just describing what's happening in the movie, but that's at least arguable. What I don't want to hear is things like this. The fact that there are no characters and no story is the point of the film. It's minimalism. It's supposed to engage you on a sub-level and challenge the norm of film structure. If that statement is true, and if it is okay to pass off this bullshit as art for that reason, Purple Monkey Dishwasher should be seen as a perfectly acceptable addition to the world of art, and I expect it to be praised just as much as No Country for Old Men. And if it's acceptable to pass off all this bullshit as art, then what's preventing me from getting Purple Monkey Dishwasher into the Cannes Film Festival? I mean, it's art, right? I made it. There's symbolism there. Bullshit like this should not qualify as art. Not even bad art. And the thing that almost downright frustrates me is that without ever bothering to ask what the symbolism was, most people immediately and quite rightly identified my movie as a joke. Why wasn't this immediately identified as a joke? You remove the stupid, empty, arbitrary, meaningless what's in the case part of Pulp Fiction, and you would still have a great movie, because you would still have a great story, great characters, and great dialogue. You remove everything but the stupid, empty, arbitrary, meaningless what's in the case part, and all you have left is an empty case with light shining out of it. Writing a modernist thriller is kind of like trying to make a round square. It just doesn't work. And trying to make a modernist thriller into a movie is kind of like trying to make Purple Monkey Dishwasher. I feel like I'm just making the same point over and over at this junction, so I will end this by answering a very popular question. If you remember, I had said in my Minority Report review that Minority Report was the worst movie I had ever seen in my life, but I was very quick to point out that that does not mean I think it is the worst movie ever made. I made the same qualification with the best movie I had ever seen in my life, because I don't think that best and worst titles are something to be tossed around lightly. That is a very serious charge, and something that I don't think should be said rhetorically, regardless of how much a movie personally bothers me or makes me like it. So the question I have been asked 1,000 times is this: do I think No Country for Old Men is worse than Minority Report? I think No Country for Old Men is probably the worst movie that's ever been made. This concludes my epilogue, as well as my rhetorical call to arms with regard to this issue. Let's all take a stand against bullshit like this being passed off as art.